Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to these Friday reflections on this just after midnight on the 15th of July 2023. I hope you are well, wherever you're tuning into this from. Apologies, I'm a bit late today again. These things happen, but istiqomah is the important thing, to keep consistent even if something throws us off track, as I've said before. So today I would like to read to you from this book, Mercy Ocean's Hidden Treasures. It's one of Mawlana Shaykh Nazim's earliest books, going back to, I think, 1981 or something. It's really very early. Maybe 81 or 82 or 83, one of those years. And I just realized, although I've read from this book before, I don't think I've actually read the first Sohbet that's recorded in the book, starting on page 9. So I'm going to read that today. And we taught him knowledge from our divine presence. We are reading from my Grand Sheikh's lectures. Now that's Grand Sheikh Abdullah Fayez Dagestani, who was the Sheikh of Mawlana Shaykh Nazim and Mawlana Shaykh Hisham Kabani. Grand Sheikh was an unlettered man, but Allah Almighty teaches some people because they put everything out of their hearts except their Lord, and they choose their Lord over everything until their Lord loves them. And when he loves his servant, he gives him treasures from his knowledge. No one can learn this knowledge through books. This knowledge is called ilm uladuni, or knowledge directly from the divine presence. As the Quran declares, and we taught him knowledge from our divine presence, in Surah Al-Kahf, ayat 65. Outward religious knowledge is easy to obtain. Even non-Muslims can know it, but this knowledge can't be gained except through purifying the heart of all created things, of all that exists besides Him Almighty. So you see here, Mawlana Shaykh Nazim is highlighting there's different types of knowledge. There's the knowledge which comes from books, and that includes the knowledge which comes from holy books, although that knowledge originally came from the divine presence. But there's a certain kind of knowledge that comes from books, and knowledge which comes from academia. And there's nothing wrong with that knowledge. We should learn that knowledge as beneficial knowledge. But Mawlana Shaykh Nazim said that there are some people who are taught directly by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salam Paki, thank you for joining us. Some people are taught directly by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those people who are taught directly by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have knowledge that maybe no one else had or has. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was one such person who was given knowledge directly from the divine presence, because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a prophet of Allah. But Mawlana Shaykh Nazim here is saying that it's not only prophets that can receive inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are other people, such as his Sheikh, Grand Sheikh Abdullah Fayez Dagestani. And there are others. I personally believe my father was among such people, because he had profound insights and wisdoms, which I know he never read in books. And my dad was someone who was a God-conscious, good human being. And his life is, it exemplifies that. But there's a difference, so therefore, between this knowledge, which you can gain from books by reading yourself, and of course, this knowledge is widely available. There's books behind me. Anybody else could buy these books and study them, and indeed they do. But if someone is given something by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly, it might be something that's been given to someone else and is found in books, but it might be something unique, which is given only to them. And we have a reference to this within the Holy Quran, where the Prophet Musa alayhi salam was told that there was someone else who's being given knowledge of a kind which you were not given. And of course, that person was Khidr alayhi salam. Peace be upon all the prophets. And the knowledge and insights which Khidr alayhi salam were given were quite different from the knowledge and insights that the Prophet Moses was given. And Moses, peace be upon him, he lost patience with Khidr, as Khidr already predicted he would, because the way he was taught was so different to the way that Khidr alayhi salam was taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they both had knowledge, they both had wisdom, and indeed Musa alayhi salam was kind of inspired and encouraged to go and seek Khidr out so that he could discover this other kind of knowledge which he hadn't been given. So this basically is what Mawlana Shaykh Nazim is talking about here. We'll continue. One of those chosen people was our Grand Sheikh Abdullah ad-Dagestani, Sultan al-Awliya. He was telling us from his knowledge treasures that every verse of the Quran and Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ contains every knowledge concerning everyone living, already passed away, or yet to be born in future generations. Therefore, if a person is thinking about or pondering over a verse of the Quran or a Hadith, he may attain the ability of clear distinction, and so he will find his way to his Lord with ease. If anyone takes up his journey with a holy verse or hadith, his path will become clear within himself, as Allah says about his Prophet that he is calling people to a clear, bright, clean, and safe way. Therefore, it is important for everyone to search for a verse or a hadith and ponder it, so that it will become clear to him, and then so many beneficial ways and divine signs will appear to him. Grand Sheikh said that each person will derive benefit from verses and hadiths according to his faith power. The more faith power he reaches, the more benefit he may derive. He may dive deeper and deeper and deeper into these meanings, these meaning oceans contained therein. Grand Sheikh said that Awliya may perceive at least 24,000 meanings from one verse's oceans of meanings. You can't see anything in a drop of water, but when you are looking with a microscope, you may see millions of living bacteria coming and going every which way. Therefore, there cannot be any valid objection to this saying, and anyone who claims that there is only one meaning for an ayah is indeed a foolish person. So you see here, obviously you've got meanings from the study of the Quran and from Hadith which are very apparent and clear. But even the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself said in his last sermon to take his words to future generations. teach them to other people and even into future generations, because maybe someone then will understand things better than what the people in the time of the Prophet Muhammad understood. In other words, maybe people now, or maybe in the future, will understand things which are in the Quran and Hadith better than even the Sahaba Ikram understood them. Why? Well, because some of these touch on scientific meanings. Now, the Quran is not a book of science. The Hadith are not books of science, and it's very clear to clear that out of the way. Nevertheless, there are certain things which are mentioned, which are clearly things which touch upon science. An example is the water cycle. The water cycle, about how the water evaporates from the oceans and forms clouds and travels over land and rains. But at the same time, I'm not going to go dwell too much on that one, because I think that one is more readily apparent to anybody who just observes the natural world. But then there are things such as the discussion of the development of the fetus in the womb, which is found within the Quran. Now, it's clear that the Quran is not a book of science, because if you did not have access to the science, you wouldn't fully understand those verses in the Quran. The Quran is therefore not a book of science and is not teaching science. But if we understand with the scientific knowledge, when we reread these ayahs, we can understand those ayahs better and realize that the source of those ayahs was someone who already had that knowledge, which was then discovered later by the science. It's not that those ayats are teaching science. You are not going to learn science by studying the Quranic verses. But you might get insights and inspiration, but you're not going to learn the actual science. But at the same time, because of certain things that were mentioned, such as how the fetus looks and stuff with a very early stage, which without modern equipment and stuff is hard to discover, it indicates in that the source of these words had access to that knowledge. Now, of course, as Muslims, we believe that source is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so of course he has access to that knowledge and vast oceans of knowledge besides that. But it's a sign for other people who maybe they're not believers. When they read it and they understand that they can go, oh wow, this must come from Allah. But also it's something which is important for us as Muslims, so that we get a better understanding of what the Quran is teaching. And then when we understand that, oh, that's referring to that, maybe there were some previous meanings that were derived from that were incorrect, because they didn't have the more up-to-date science. So this is also why it's important that we study in all fields and not just study the Quran and Hadith. But at the same time, when we do have knowledge from other fields, that we don't neglect the studying of Quran and Hadith. As Mawlana Shaykh Nazim here is pointing out, that if you ponder any of these verses of Quran or any of the genuine Hadiths, that there are oceans of knowledge within them. And of course, you would expect that, because these are words from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the words from a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, there's oceans of wisdom in them, and many meanings that are yet to be discovered, even now. And I know that from someone who, I have a friend who, Dr. Safi Kaskas, who is a translator of the Quran, and he's told me certain things when he was translating the Quran, that it was only some of the very latest scientific discoveries that helped him understand a few of these verses. And he gained a deeper insight by pondering upon those verses of the Quran and simultaneously pondering upon scientific discoveries. So Mawlana Shaykh Nazim said that Grand Sheikh said that each person will derive benefit from verses and hadiths according to his faith power. And the more faith power he reaches, the more benefit he will derive. Now, the other point Mawlana Shaykh Nazim mentions here is you can't see anything. So some people, they would just say there's only the apparent meaning. Well, Mawlana Shaykh Nazim is comparing that to a drop of water. To a lot of people, they would just look at a drop of water and see a drop of water. Mawlana Shaykh Nazim is saying if you put that drop of water under a microscope, you will see all sorts of bacteria, viruses, other things in that drop of water, even dust particles and stuff. And it's like a universe in that drop of water. And of course, the Sufis said long before the scientific development that there is an ocean in a drop of water. And of course, we know that now with the science, because the deeper and deeper that you go into things, it's like if you look at my hand looks like a hand. But then if you just look at, never mind the whole hand, just look at a piece of the skin of the hand. Just cut a slice through that piece of that skin and put that under a microscope and see how many different layers are in that skin. And they're all containing different kinds of cells and even other symbiotic organisms that live within our skin. And that's just the skin of our hand, let alone the flesh of our hand and the bones and the blood vessels. But to a lot of people, we just look at a hand and just see a hand. The deeper we study things, the more we discover. And it doesn't matter whether we're looking at a microscopic level or we're looking at a macroscopic level. Within the past year or so, they put the James Webb Deep Space Telescope in orbit. That is looking out into the universe. And they're suddenly discovering more and more galaxies than they didn't even know existed before that. Just as what happened when they launched the Hubble telescope all them years ago. And the other telescopes that were based on Earth even before that, as they got more and more powerful, they saw further and further. Again, that's looking deeper into something. That's looking deeper on a macroscopic level. If you look into my hand or into a drop of water, you're looking deeper and deeper on a microscopic level. But the more deeper you delve into anything, you discover things that you didn't know before. Well, just as you can do it with that, you can do the same thing with the study of language, with the study of words. Even a particular word, if you look at the root meanings of those words and where they came from and the history of those words, you can discover some incredible things. And just amazing insights. I mean, just a couple of days ago, I shared a little short video by Shaykh al-Islam Dr. Tariq al-Qadri, who was sharing the etymological root of the word human in Arabic, al-insan. And this has two roots within it. And it's really fascinating because a lot of people don't think that. You just think, whether it's al-insan or Arabic or human in English, you just think it means what it apparently means. But each one of these words has a root meaning. It's like the word Adam in the Bible, and it's a Hebrew word as well as an Arabic word, and how that's connected to earth. I mean, it's like, and it says in both the Quran and the Bible that we're made of earth. And today, many people will say, well, obviously, we weren't made like potter's clay out of earth because that doesn't make sense. But still, if you look at the minerals that the human body is made of, they're all the same minerals that are found in the soil. Because we are made of Sorry, we are made of the food that we eat, and the food that we eat grows in soil. So those plants are made of minerals from the soil. Even if we eat meat, the meat is made from the minerals that were consumed from the plants that came from the earth. There's no getting away from it. We are made of earth. Not in the same way that this cup is made from earth, but still we're made from earth. Strange, actually, when you think about it, that the minerals I'm made from are actually the same minerals that's in this cup. And yet, the way that they're structured, and because I'm an organic living organism, and the way this cup is structured, which is just made of fired clay, is different. But essentially, you'll find the same minerals in both me and this cup. And science is fascinating. And that is why whole books are written on it. As Mawlana Shaykh Nazim goes on to say here. And so therefore, Mawlana says that there cannot be any valid objection to this saying, and anybody who claims that there is only one meaning for an ayat is indeed a foolish person. If anyone is objecting, we may say to him, "Oh, my brother, look, Allah sent to Muhammad only one book. Now just look at the Islamic world, and you will find huge libraries overflowing with books. And the main source for all these books is the Holy Quran. Millions of books on the whole range of Islamic topics, and very precious books at that. Where then do all these books come from? They are springing from the living source of the Holy Quran. They didn't exist, nor could they have existed before the Quran was revealed. It is then but a small thing to say that a wali, a saint, can know at least of 24,000 meanings for a verse. You can find libraries growing every day. Some Islamic authors wrote several hundred volumes on the meanings of the Quran, and now even Europeans are joining the Muslims in writing about its meanings. This generation may write 2 or 3 books on every book which is presently in the library, just for their clarification and explanation. And so you may know that the knowledge of the Quran is constantly expanding. If such is the case for a scholarly knowledge of the Quran, then what about the knowledge of such people whose teacher is Allah Himself? Allah's knowledge is limitless, and for all He bestows upon His servants from it, still it will never decrease. We are never going to be satisfied with our level of learning, as mankind has a boundless yearning for knowledge. Therefore, Islam is best and Islam is highest, giving mankind as much knowledge as he could wish for, and explaining the reality of all existence. There is a proverb: man will never be satisfied with regard to 2 desires, money and knowledge. Whosoever seeks money will never say enough, and likewise, he who seeks knowledge will never say enough. This saying points out the 2 sides of man's personality: the ego, nafs, asking for endless pleasures in this life, and the soul asking for endless heavenly knowledges. I thought it's worth reflecting upon that, and worth reflecting upon the Quran, and worth reflecting upon the more profound and genuine hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There's a lot we can learn from that, and a lot of inspiration that we can take. And especially if we combine this As I said earlier, with the study of the sciences or other fields of knowledge, we can benefit immensely, especially when we start to see the connections between different fields of knowledge and realize just there is something like, I think, big data, they call it, where they start to see the connections between different fields of knowledge, different topics, different subjects, and realizing that, you know, it's not just like if we look very microscopically at a particular area within a particular field, but to really understand things, you also have to have a bigger picture as well. And this is the one shortcoming of the sort of Western and modern academic approach to learning, because it tends to be very specialized. And you'll find people who they will be a particular specialist in a particular scientific field, such as genetics, and they'll be brilliant at that. But then they might not be aware of things that people who studied other subjects will be aware of. They don't have the sort of the big picture view. So it's important to be able to combine these different fields of knowledge, and we benefit from that by educated people interacting with each other and discussing with each other across different fields. And this is also why you'll find people who they come from, let's say, the sciences, but they are not well versed in religion, but they just know like a sketchy overview of religion, but not necessarily the deep thought, the deep study, the deep reflection with, within any of our religious traditions. And then they jump to conclusions and start criticizing religion using their scientific knowledge approach that was for evolution or some other scientific field. And it's okay that people can do that, but at the same time, how can you really comment on another field of knowledge when you're specialized in another specialist area within a completely different field of knowledge? And this is why I've always encouraged people to try to get some general knowledge as well. Don't just focus on your area. And no matter how good you are at a particular field of knowledge, read about other things. You know, or even watch educational videos on, from good sources, credible people about other areas of knowledge, because it really helps you put things into perspective. And when you can put things into perspective, you see things more clearly. But if you're only understanding a particular specialized area of knowledge within a vacuum, then alhamdulillah, you have knowledge, you understand something, but there's a lot of things that you wouldn't see. So it's good for us all to read books on different subjects, and this is why I do it. Even though I always get asked, that's why it's important. Different subjects, people coming at things from different perspectives, and it just broadens and deepens our understanding. So I hope you enjoyed that. The book I was reading is unfortunately out of print these days. Mercy Ocean's Hidden Treasures from the 1980s by Mawlana Shaykh Nazim. But I do believe that you can get the PDF if you Google online, and you will be able to find some of these talks, no doubt, in some of the later compilations of Mawlana Shaykh Nazim's talks, because I know some of the later on still were recompiled from the Sohbets that Mawlana Shaykh Nazim delivered during the 1980s. I will leave that there, and thank you for joining us. I wish you all have a very good weekend. If you're in the UK, well, good morning to you, I guess, because it's the early hours now. And wherever you are in the world, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May the peace and blessings of God be with you all.